The abstract dimension of chess. What is that? Well, it's positional chess. I know we love solving tactics, we love winning material, but the position does not always call for that. And when the position does not call for that, you have to come up with ideas, you have to come up with plans. Famous GMs say a bad plan is better than no plan, but we're going to be looking at good plans today. So to get started, I want everybody to put their abstract shades on, and let's get into it. So in this position, it is black to move. What are white's weaknesses? Always a good first question to ask yourself. You might be like, okay, that's a soft fianchetto, but they have a light squared bishop guarding it, and our light squared bishop is not so much able to target that weakness. You might say d3, that's a backwards pawn. It's not really a backwards pawn because they could go d4, and they can easily guard it with bishop f1. What other weaknesses do they have? Well, look at this guy on a4. That is a lonely pawn. That is not a great pawn because it's not easily defended. Do you see how we can target that pawn? Bishop to c6 might come to mind, and you would be correct. Targeting the pawn. What is the only way white can guard this pawn? Well, it is queen to a1. What did we get from bishop to c6? We improved our bishop's diagonal. You'll see what I mean in a second. And you unimproved white's queen. It is on a1. That is not a great square for the queen because it has no vision. This bishop, on the other hand, can now improve itself to d7, continuously opening up routes for his pieces. This does a few things. One, it opens up the queen over here. It aims at h3 on this diagonal, and it gives you claiming to the c file. In this position, white went knight to d2 and now find the win for black. This was played by Peter Lecco, and he misplayed this position. The best move and the winning move is bishop to c5, setting up the battery on f2. It doesn't look so crazy, though it does look like a good move. White will then have to guard his pawn on f2 with the rook, and now find the winning idea. Pause the video, it is not easy. Remember how we said we open up the 6th rank? Look at that queen. If it goes to h6, now you have 2 attackers on h3, 1 attacker on d2, you are officially picking up a pawn. Not much white could do here. Let's say they go somewhere like knight to c4, saving their knight. You would indeed snag this pawn on h3, and it's just about GG's. If white takes the bishop, you might be like, they'll win the material back. Now it's tactic time, right? From good positional chess, do stem tactics. That is queen takes g3 with this marvelous bishop on this diagonal, pinning the f-pawn to the king. It's not so much better if white were to take this pawn on a5 because you still have queen takes g3. Even if they don't take your bishop and they take this pawn on a5, you might be like, oh boy, it's a pawn for a pawn. Another tactic, bishop takes f2, right? Because if rook takes, the queen guards c1, and you're going to pick up a bunch of material that way. And if king takes, it's actually arguably even worse because white's just going to get checkmated. Now, just to show in the game real quick what happened, because Peter Lecco did win this game. He is a beast. But he misplayed it. He went rook takes c1. Now we get rook takes c1, bishop to c5. You might say, what's the difference? I mean, isn't he going to win material and now he's just up a pawn? Well, no, because now queen to h6 does not work because he has freed up the c file for his queen, which is another good motif, right? The less pieces on the first rank, the more white's queen can improve itself. And now it's defending just about everything, and it's attacking this bishop because you don't have a rook on c8, so you cannot snag the pawn. So same idea, but worse, and we don't want that. So that's positional puzzle number 1. Now we are going to go to positional puzzle number 2. This is Nigel Short with the black pieces, the guy I drew on chess.com recently. And okay, what is white's weakness? Some of you might say it is the open king on the g file. Others may say it is the pawn on f4. The right answer is that it is the pawn on f4. Let's see what happened. In the game, Nigel Short went queen to e8. He's like, I'm going to improve my queen. White created a threat of his own with queen to a7 on this pawn on g7 with check, and black gave this check on g6. After king f1, maybe they were in time pressure, but Nigel Short threw the game with the move queen to g4. Find the win for white. Quite a cold shower. The move is knight to g5. It guards the check that black had on h3. It tactically defends f4. And this is just resignation because there's no way that black can defend this pawn on g7. For example, takes, you take, and it is just checkmate. So a tragic way to lose the game for Nigel. What should he have done? A funny looking move, but a good one. Queen to b8, targeting the weakness on f4. Now I think white's only move here is to go pawn to e5 to stop the connection of black's queen on this pawn on f4. Now what do we do? You always need to calculate taking, but you should recognize that this is not a great move. You might be like, hey, they're pinned. If they take, I win the knight. That would be hope chess. They would take with the rook. And now white's pieces get in. This is a very weak pawn. You might be like, I'll set up a battery on their weakness. Everything is fine. Not exactly, because white connects on this pawn on g7. And again, their attack is just stronger than yours. So after the move queen to b8, white went pawn to e5. And now find black's move. You might say, oh, rook b4. Not a bad move. But then white gets in and creates his own threats. Look for better. You see how we're aiming at this pawn on f2? Rooks on the second, they do themselves justice much of the time. In this position, white would go rook to f1. And now calculate the difference in this position. There's a beautiful continuation here. Now you take the pawn. Right? Chess is an engine with a bunch of moving parts. You move one part, it's a whole different position. Now it is not hope chess. Obviously, if they take the pawn with the pawn, they lose the knight. So they would take with the knight, and you're like, don't they have an outposted knight? Isn't this a bad pawn on e6? All of which is true, but from good positional chess stems tactics. Bishop takes f2, a cold shower yet again. The point is after rook takes, king takes, you might be like, there's not enough material on the board. There's just enough, right? The f-pawn is pinned. We win the knight back and we win the game simply because we're up a pawn and we're going to be up 2 pawns because they have to defend the pawn with their king. You go queen to e3 check. Now the decision is up to them. Do they want to go king g2? At which point you just take the pawn on f4 and you have a winning position with checkmate in the midst. Or do they go king to g4 and you find the mate? Pawn to h5, a very common tactic. This does many things. It unties the king from the pawn, which then leads to checkmate. In an assortment of ways, this is one of them. So, this is positional puzzle number 2. Now, the most positional puzzle is puzzle number 3. This is not an easy position to play for black because you are underdeveloped. They are fully developed. But there's only one way to play this to keep it balanced that black did not find in the game. Let's start by asking, what is white's weakness? It is this pawn on b3. These pawns are doubled. This pawn on b3 cannot easily be defended. But then you also got to think, what is white's threat? Well, white's massive threat is the move pawn to e5. And it's not so easy to stop that, right? If you go f6, horrible pawn structure, also allows for bishop takes c5, so there's tactics in the midst. Vice versa, if you did it from the other angle, you're like, oh, I'll just stop the move pawn to e5. It does not stop that. It deters it and loses a pawn, and then you are still losing. So in the game, logically, black went knight to d7. He connects the rooks, he guards c5, and he guards e5. Does he, though? White still went the move pawn to e5, and after a large exchange, I would say, right? King takes, pawn takes, rook takes, rook takes, rook takes, bishop takes, bishop takes. Why is white winning this? Well, simply because he has a 3-on-1 majority on the queen side, and his pieces are well coordinated on the queen side. Black has yet to get his pieces out. White did effortlessly go on to win the game. So, what is the move? How do you target this weakness in 2 moves? The move is knight to c6. Let me nerd up and push these up real quick. All right, what does this do? Well, the point is not to take the pawn on e5 because that would be a transposition to the position we just looked at. The move is actually knight to a5, targeting the weakness. Active counterplay over passive defense. Okay, the point now is after they take this pawn on d6, you take back with the knight. They go bishop takes c5, you go knight takes b3. And again, there's going to be a large assortment of trades, but it is balanced. And it's actually easy for both sides to go wrong, but let's look at the right continuation. We get knight takes, we get bishop takes e7 hitting the rook, and only one move here for equality. Not knight takes f3, even though this is a discovered check. It does not work in your favor after bishop takes, because after rook takes, knight takes. I know it's hard to do some quick math, but white is up a piece. Bishop takes rook. All right, so what do we do? Well, Find the move in this position for black to maintain equality. There's a lot going on. But the move is bishop takes f3. Luckily, you are attacking the rook, as are they. So it all works out for you. They cannot go bishop takes bishop because you have knight takes f3. And after the king moves, you just snag this and you are up material again. The discovered check worked in your favor. So they have to go bishop takes rook. We go rook takes bishop because they are still under threat. And again, if takes, this is how you preserve equality. Rook takes, knight takes. Crazy that all these pieces were traded off the board, but it is a balanced position. You have a 4-on-3 on the king side. They have a 2-on-1 on the queen side, but your king is well within the box to stop those pawns, and it is a balanced position. So these were all very difficult. Did you get any right? I'll post the FENs or PGNs to the boards underneath, so you can take it as an exam if you would like. Now I'm recognizing I should have said that in the beginning of the video, but I hope you enjoyed. Thank you as always for watching. See you tomorrow. Peace.